greatest privilege to welcome you all to the third Father McGrath Memorial Programme. Now with that, I'd like to now invite Father George.
I think it is Agatha Christie. In one of her books, she says, when first time it takes place, it's called coincident. Second time it takes place, then it is not a coincidence, it's a clue. And third time, if it takes place, it is called proof. I think third memorial debate we are conducting, it's a proof that 1987 batch has the love for Father McGrath and his contribution. Father McGrath was deeply committed, especially the social issues, the economically poor, the laborers, and he was loved, and he also loved them unconditionally. So I really congratulate the Peace Students Foundation who initiated, who contributed a lot for organizing this. Of course, initiation came from 1987 batch. So for both, I really congratulate and all the best. And you have been conducting continuously in a very successful manner. And people from all walks of life take part, and business school students really get an opportunity to think as a responsible citizens of this country. So once again, I thank the 87 batch and congratulate all the debaters who have reached the final, and let the best team win. Thank you very much.
Language can also corrupt thought, said George Orwell in 1984. If the stakeholders' desire for truth is hunger, corporate disclosures are nothing but sealed canisters of raw ingredients. When the truth is told by the one about whom it is, in a language alien to the audience and in a soporific tune intended to lull them into sleep, it ceases, by any definition, to be the truth.
Now that we're talking about society, let me point out that two major advantages that disclosures offer to the society. One, the advantages of the avoidance of financial scandals. Second, improvement in financial stability. Through information, regulations, audits performed by credit rating agencies, these days the risks of such untoward instances are avoided to ensure society benefits as the paramount game plan.
The truth about company fundamentals falls back to only the smallest of concerns. It's all about crafting a compelling story that showcases their strengths, just like marketing. And what's worse, disclosure can reduce the average analyst's incentive to look for additional information about the firm, and therefore can lead to a potentially devastating illusion of knowledge.
Why it is important today? Because the power center that these big corporations hold are greater than what the economies hold. In a study, 180 countries, the below 180 countries, total GDP is less than the top 10 corporations' profit. So this is very important to understand that they have a say, they have an important role to play.
Information is the currency of democracy, and media is the means of ensuring that it is made freely accessible to all those who seek for it. Because in the end, only a well-informed and connected world can truly be a democratic one.
It can actually make it more difficult for regulators to do their job effectively. Therefore, it is important to be critical of media coverage and to recognize that it is just one source of information among many that regulators and the public need to consider.
This is what actually happened in Jan Lokpal Bill. People came together, they ensured that the government was pressured to bring out transparency and information that is happening in the government. And what happened? The government had to make it an act. They had to ensure that people are getting the information they wanted within the government.
I firmly believe that media works according to the market forces and at the helms of the content producers. And no matter how hard it tries, it mostly creates no effect on the authorities.
The events saw corporate leaders, journalists and entrepreneurs discussing the role of media in enabling conscious capitalism.
So let me start with you, Siddharth. In the era of deep fakes and generative intelligence, how can media act as a watchdog for truth?
He spoke about in the media right now is actually a fundamental business model issue that, as Sharbir said, hasn't changed in the last 100 years. We expect the media to actually tell us literally everything there is to say about the world. which actress is doing, what which promoter is doing, what's happening in some corner of the world, which protest is happening over there, etc. So I think specialization within media actually becomes important, because the way I look at media, see, media is something that nobody can actually wish away. It is the fourth estate. It is a core fundamental role that they actually play, not just in business, but in society as well. For that, you can debate it's for, against, for that matter, but it has the same inherent flaws that any other business vertical or any other plank of society actually has. I think what the most important thing for media to actually do is to actually diversify its business model and understand that there is a large amount of responsibility that you carry. The moment if the media is actually misinformed, it's actually an obligation of the media to actually get people who are better informed in those particular aspects and make sure that they are actually at the forefront to end up actually speaking. Even with regard to business models and revenue lines for media as well. There are immense number of people, and startups have actually shown this, where people don't mind actually paying for high quality reporting. It doesn't have to be breaking news every 30 minutes. News has actually become the dopamine fix that they can't get from any other aspect of their life. So even with deepfakes and everything that's there, all this is AI generated. There are equal number of AI tools that exist that can actually figure out is this a deepfake or not. Which are free, which are there. But the thing is, no one actually wants to go out there, because if it feeds a bias that you have against certain individual, corporate group, anyone else, the journalist is more than happy to actually pump it out there and let the market decide is this fake, is this not. The most important role that all of us need to play also right now is to independently validate some of the assumptions that we've held very dear. I think this is a role that we've delegated sort of to media, and I think that's something we need to take away. That's that thing. And I think the second most important thing is, as a society, we need to actually move away from the fact that if something goes wrong, there's someone else going to come and take care of us. Let's go to the government, let's go to a regulator, let's ask them for more laws, for more regulations, for more this. But I think we are at a stage in life right now where we can actually stand up and say, look, enough is enough. You can actually call them out, and you do actually have that particular power with you. Don't keep shying away from that more often. But in order for you to use it, I think you also need to educate yourself a lot more. You can't end up having opinions masquerading as facts, because that can actually end up doing damage. So I think a little more responsibility from our side, and stop delegating your authority to some higher power. I think that'll go a long way in making sure that not just the youth of today, but even media, corporate houses, and everyone for that matter, can actually start creating the kind of difference that they should.
Actually, somebody has to be activist. Our job is information. We are putting the fact out there. It is up to the stakeholder, the person who has shares in a company, to pick out that fact and create activism, make a noise over there at it. We are also investing a lot more in our own research versus a paid for research which we buy, So I totally agree. It's also about your gut feel. You should get your guard up when companies are trying to peddle a narrative. I mean, the number of CSR stories we've tried to avoid, companies try to give you their narrative. And it's a constant dance that we don't want to sell your narrative, we will find our narrative, So, yeah. Pankaj, I'm also very envious of the young, because I think from a different perspective that, unlike us who laid a lot of store by job security, I find that today's young are actually driven by their passion, and their, they can, and they also can experiment, so they can work a year, and if they don't like it, move on, and they don't, there's no hierarchy. They can actually break through, and they can have conversations. Information is available. Choices, my God, the number of choices before you, it's utterly. So essentially, finally, it's about what you're passionate about. Just follow your passion. Don't follow the money, but follow the passion.
This is the reason why in many companies, including when I was in Tata's, the majority of grievances would be expressed anonymously. People said, there's no purchase in disclosing my identity. Let me do this through an anonymous channel. The problem with anonymity is nobody can go back to. You can't verify whether an anonymous allocation is true or not. So the way we finessed it in Tata's for at least the time that I was the chief ethics officer was to say if there is verifiable data. So there are ways in which you can correlate dates, let's say sexual harassment. Somebody was alone with somebody else. Did that meeting actually take place? Were there witnesses outside the room? Was there a sense that somebody emerged looking distraught? Are there ways you can confirm the allegations? I'd say that really it's becoming very clear that many of the challenges we are going to be seeing over the next few decades could be existential. Global warming is a case in point, extreme climatic events. A lot of it can impact the ways in which society is organized, the kind of economy that we have. And therefore, on each one of you, I think it's incumbent that you have a view of the kind of social construct you want to participate in, and therefore the kind of corporates you might want to work with. So if you're looking for a career, I would advocate that look for organizations that share your value system, that seem to have a concern for a wide body of stakeholders, not just one select group, certainly not just one family, and try and see the role you can play, as Siddharth said. Play your part in trying to be an agent of change. And I think increasingly there are a lot of tools that technology offers that allows you to play a much bigger role than perhaps any of us could conceive of 2-3 decades back when we were joining the workforce. So go with conviction, find an organization, employer that shares your value system, then strive to change things more broadly around you, because corporates have great power, and with that comes great responsibility.
But the other side is, do you think the generation today care and give a damn that they will go through a process? They will go and put it on a Twitter. If you're, I think the CEOs of the company, just talk to them. They say that I am not so worried about somebody writing an anonymous letter. I'm worried about my employee going on social media and writing something about me. And you're talking of journalists are journalists. Journalists are generalists. There are HR professionals and leaders. You all will remember Warren Bennis, the guru of behavioral sciences. He said there are two kinds of people, narrow specialists and deep generalists. He said you can succeed in either of them, but your chances to succeed as a deep generalist is higher. But when you look at a press reporter and you say he or she is the worst of both, in the sense they are neither a narrow specialist nor a deep generalist, they are a narrow generalist. If one thing I have to, since I work with government, I just want to tell you there is something magical happening in India, which is on the digital public goods or digital public infrastructure. Our GST, our UPI. When we go in US and in any other country, we say the numbers, the transactions, their eyes pop out. No one in the world for next 30 years can catch with us. All of you who are young, I wish I was young. I envy you. Just go and build businesses around that. You will have enough scale and you will create enough impact. And lastly, build businesses with purpose, enough of capital returns. I promise capital is bound to come back to you in a much more loads if you build a purpose-led business.
Look for value, not valuation. And I'm saying that as a VC.
We need to, and I think this is where companies, the media, and the government have to reset an equation on the over-criminalization of laws, which is we've come to a de facto setting, which is if something can't be done, criminalize it. As a classic example is the corporate social responsibility norms, which were criminalized and subsequently reversed. But it's become our de facto governance position, and it's become our de facto governance call that we need more laws, and we keep complaining about our laws. We don't need more laws to improve governance. We need a concerted effort with the leadership, with the top leadership of companies to drive home that change. And that's where the conversation has to start, and the media has to show a mirror. Whether it's dealing with whistleblowers, we have probably one of the worst track records. The media didn't show a mirror to the legislation that finally made its way through, and companies are more than happy to continue down this path. All it takes is one group, one CEO. I'm not even saying you need a chief ethics officer to do that. It could be anybody. It could be a CFO who creates this. And generally promoting a culture where there is an obligation to dissent. And that can be a competitive advantage. There's sufficient evidence over the years to demonstrate dissent as a competitive advantage for growth within organization. A majority of our negative stories are narrative-based. A majority of our negative stories are not fact-based. Now, yes, I understand the constraints of regulators not sharing, companies blacking out. There is that, but there is sufficient information out there to still make fact-based assessments. Yeah. To take a crude example, for 75 years approximately till this digital era came in, didn't have to invest in research and development to the extent that other organizations had to stay competitive. And now, when we are going to be dealing with deep fakes, when we are going to be dealing with fake news, when we are going to be dealing with something that started out as a rumor and went around the world 5 times over and now is being sort of cited as gospel, is going to be an upskilling of journalists to be able to separate the wheat from chaff. the next few decades are India's decades. And to maximize what's going to come our way and contribute constructively to these decades in terms of nation building, we have, I would look at two very important elements. Element number one is, I would earlier say read, but I think Siddharth's already pointed out that YouTube's a far better medium.
Beyond that, suppose there is a journalist who has a malified intent, has specific bias, or a news group that has that bias. Is there a way to create some mechanism that calls it out in public? Maybe.
Okay, so here is one interesting
The
piece
corrigendums,
of
I think just to add to what Mukund said, apologies and corrigendums are really small. And just going by
That's
what
true.
you said,
Yeah.
for a system, if going by what you've said, has 3 levels of checks, it's a colossal failure, ma'am. And that would typically result in lots of heads rolling in most other organizations in the world. So I think I just want to supplement his question back to you and put you back in the hot seat for
yeah,
it.
I will come to that. So there is media and there is media, you know.
Yeah.
There is credible media and there is incredible, whatever. So, okay, now here is an interesting piece of news. So I did talk about the dependence of media on advertisement. So I just read somewhere, I still have to process it. So Group M, which manages the media budgets of a lot of, I mean, that's how it percolates down to, say, a print media, whatever. They are creating a list in 60 countries of credible media organizations in those countries. So they will channel advertisement money to those credible organizations. And I mean, I don't know how it will go or whether which, but it is a start. So it is, you know, you are.
But will you leave it to market forces and they seeing an opportunity to do this? Because presumably advertisers are asking them, you know, where can I trust that my message gets through
so there,
authentically?
I just saw the press release. It was put out 3 days ago by Group M. So what it said is that brands also gain by being seen in credible media versus being advertising
But
on,
is there a role for media to come together and do a voluntary body like Advertising Standards Council?
Yeah,
or should government take a role?
Yeah, in this case, it's market forces. It's the advertisers coming together to protect the interests of their brands. They also don't want to be seen. The brand doesn't want to be seen advertising in media which is not credible. So I mean, these things are happening.
Fantastic. So there's nothing left really for me to say, which is very rare. But on that note, thank you so much.
In a country like ours, we have media houses bought by the very leaders who go on and on about how democratic our country is. The very basic foundation is built with biasness. Then how do you expect the journalists to be fair in what they do? And how do we believe in what they write in the comments about corporate governance?
Investigative journalism acts like a CCTV camera for corporates and their governance practices. But has there been situations where investigative journalism helped out corporate issues? He did mention one. The Adani case is a very good example.
Your corporate governance look like? Should it be developed from some scathing articles demonizing someone, or should it be built on principles like equality, fairness, inclusivity, trust? Aren't these what corporate governance should imbibe?
The period of peak circulation for all US newspapers was 1982, with 63.3 million readers. Coincidentally, some of the biggest moments in investigative journalism history occurred around this time, including the Pentagon paper leak in 1971, Watergate in 1972, and Graves revealing sexual misconduct within Congress in 1992. Today, investigative stories continue to develop with details of Capitol riots, COVID-19 pandemic response, and sexual assault cases against high-profile politicians. But the impact of these pieces is blunted because they appear in a more diffuse set of news outlets. It's all painting a rosy picture.
For the closing address of this grand and power-packed memorial program, I'd like to call Father Casimir onto the stage.
Father McGrath left such indelible impression on the hearts and minds of his students. He lived with them. He shared their life. They poured out their souls to him. He was a true guru and mentor, philosopher and friend to them, to bring about a new society. And he invested totally, completely in the students who interacted with him. May God bless each and every one of you, and thank you.